is Saturday, October the 19th, around 8:20 a.m., middle of October, almost peak fall season in the North Carolina mountains. Some people say that hiking is a marathon and not a sprint, and that is exactly what I'm doing today, a full marathon of hiking. This is my 7th and final hike for the Black Mountains Hiking Challenge by the NC High Peaks Association, and I'm doing the route typically used for the Black Mountains Marathon, an ultra run that happens once or twice a year from Boland's Creek all the way to Cane River Gap. I drove 4 hours last night to Cane River Gap and slept in my car and got picked up by the Yancey County Transit Authority at 6:30 a.m. for a shuttle to Boland's Creek. And I'm hiking approximately 26.5 miles today, according to Cal Topo at least. Started my hike around 7:10 a.m. and I'm currently hauling my way up the Black Mountain Crest Trail, aka the Death March, up towards the Horse Rock Meadows beside Siloa Knob. I did this Black Mountains Crest Trail one way, I think August or July of 2015, over 4 years ago. So today I'm doing the exact same route, and then I'm doubling that. So once I reach Mount Mitchell, I'm going to refuel. Hopefully the little gift shop up there is open, because I brought my wallet to get some liquids and ice cream or snacks. And that's about 12 and a half miles to that point and over 5,500 feet of elevation gain. From there, I'm either going to take the Mount Mitchell Trail or the MST via the Old Mitchell Camp Alice trails down to the Buncombe Horse Range Trail, and then follow that parallel to NC 128, loop around on the MST towards Blackstock Knob, and the final 5.5 miles back to my car on the Big Butt Trail. In total, it's going to be close to 8,000 feet of elevation gain, and this is going to be the longest and hardest day hike I've ever done. But I'm looking forward to finishing the challenge. I know my legs and feet are going to be screaming at me at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I'm about halfway done with this hike. My goal is to finish this by the 12-hour mark. Since I started at 7, I want to finish around 7 o'clock, which is only 20 minutes past sunset. I also have an added incentive of finishing quickly because the weather forecast was really good leading up until yesterday. And there is a tropical system in the Gulf, I think it's Tropical Storm Josephine, that's about to hit Florida, but the outer bands have spread out really far, and we're supposed to get rain from that tropical system late afternoon. It's like a 70% chance of rain now, and it's going to be like 50 degrees and half an inch of rain. It's going to be miserable. So I kind of want to hit the flat part of the Big Butt Trail for the final few hours where there's less rocks and less climbing. So instead of doing a lot of takes, this is going to be my one and only take for my intro, and I got to get up to Siloa Knob. So next stop will be Horse Rock Meadows with great views. Fingers crossed. Although the Black Mountains Crest Trail is nicknamed the Death March, and it is an ass kicker coming up from Boland's Creek to start the hike, it is by no means the hardest of the trails mile per mile in the Black Mountains. In approximately 4 miles, you gain about 3,000 feet from Boland's Creek to the Horse Rock Meadows area around Siloa Knob. But it follows a forest road track that entire stretch. So the footing is a lot better than the Colbert Ridge, Mount Mitchell, and Woody Ridge trails. Really, it's the length and the elevation gain that slow you down, because once you get up to the 6,000 foot elevation ridge lines, it's up and down over rocks, especially between Deep Gap and Mount Mitchell. Made it up to Horse Rock Meadows in good time, about 2 hours, and I feel pretty good after 3,000 feet of climbing. It's about 45 degrees up here, around 6,100 feet of elevation below Siloa Knob. And this is one of my favorite viewpoints in North Carolina. I wouldn't say it's the most expansive viewpoint, but it is one of the most difficult views to reach from any direction. And as an added bonus, since the clouds haven't come in yet, I can trace my entire route for you. I'm sure you'll love that. I do feel bad perpetuating the unofficial nickname for this stretch of trail as Horse Rock Meadows, which on some maps, this peak is incorrectly named Horse Rock when it's actually Percy's Peak. And Horse Rock is a very prominent viewpoint on the Woody Ridge Trail about 1,000 feet and a mile below to the left. Anyways, the Crest Trail is going to swing around here on forest roads, bypassing Percy's Peak, bypassing Gibbs Mountain to the west, climbing up this unofficial knob here, and then eventually climbing up Winter Star before a big drop in the Deep Gap. And then the toughest remaining climb of the day is up to these craggy peaks, Potato Hill, and then rounding Cattail Peak on the way to Balsam Cone before another drop into Big Tom Gap and a stout climb up to Big Tom and Mount Craig, and then a gradual climb up to Mount Mitchell, which does not seem like much from here. I think this is Mount Mitchell. It's kind of tough right now without the sun. Usually the sun's going to bounce off some cars and the buildings up there. But I think that's the highest peak east of the Mississippi. And then from there, I'm going to drop down off Mount Mitchell towards the east to connect with the MST and Buncombe Horse Range Trail, paralleling NC 128 south, because Mount Gibbs and Klingman's Peak with the radio towers is private land. Then the MST is going to swing around that and parallel the Blue Ridge Parkway, climbing up on this ridge line, eventually climbing up Blackstock Knob and coming around on Brush Fence Ridge, climbing up Point Misery, and no, this is Point Misery right here. And then dropping down, and the last 300-foot climb of the day is Little Butte. The Big Butte Trail bypasses Big Butte. Then I'm going to drop down all the way to Cane River Gap, where my car is, probably in about 10 hours. Let me go ahead and show you the map while I'm taking a refuel break up at Horse Rock Meadows. This is going to involve both sides of the map. This is the South Toe River, Big Ivy, Mount Mitchell map by the USDA Forest Service, 1 in 24,000. I started all the way up here at Boland's Creek. Let me step on this. Following the Black Mountain Crest Trail south, and I am currently right here, just to the diagonal left of Siloa Knob, and I'm going to eventually meet the Woody Ridge Trail in about 15 minutes and follow the Black Mountain Crest Trail south. Big drop into Deep Gap, big climb out of Deep Gap up to Potato Hill. Then it's pretty level on the way to Balsam Cone before a drop into Big Tom Gap. Big climb up to Big Tom and Mount Craig. More of a gradual climb up to Mount Mitchell. And right here is where I have an option. The shorter way is taking the Old Mitchell Camp Alice Trail to the Buncombe Horse Range Trail. The Mount Mitchell Trail connection is about a mile longer. However, the Camp Alice route is a lot steeper and it might be rougher on my feet and knees. So I might do the longer route. Then I'll follow the MST Buncombe Trail south to that junction at NC 128. Follow the MST along the parkway up Blackstock Knob to this parking area. That's the beginning of the Big Butte Trail. Follow that north. It's mostly level towards Point Misery. Then a drop in and out of a gap to Little Butte, A lot of stairs going up to Little Butte. And that's going to be my last great view of the day, looking east of the Black Mountain Crest and follow the trail all the way down to Cane River Gap. So that's going to be a giant horseshoe around the perimeter of the Cane River Valley. Even though this is the Black Mountains Marathon, I kind of want to nickname this the Black Mountain Death Horseshoe, or Horseshoe of Death, since the Crest Trail itself is the Death March. It's going to be a good day. Always love this view of Siloa Knob from the Crest Trail when it rounds Percy's Peak. The area where I just took a break is over here before the trail curls around and dives back into the forest. It is simply spectacular up here on the Black Mountain Crest Trail. Highest trail and highest peaks east of the Mississippi. Even get some views in the distance, surprisingly, of the Plot Balsam Mountains way over there, Newfound Mountains, and the Smokies. It's amazing up here. It is bright and sunny on my left, the east, but a huge cloud bank is overtaking the southern Black Mountains. It looks pretty cool, but I'm worried that from here on out it's going to get cloudier and cloudier and wetter. But I'll keep tracking this because it looks really interesting, being able to watch this unfold in real time. From here until about a mile from Mount Mitchell, Black Mountain Crest Trail gets gnarly. This is one of my favorite sections of the Black Mountain Crest Trail between Gibbs Mountain and Winter Star Mountain. This is the lower of two unnamed rocky knobs at the high point of Locust Ridge. Towards the east, we have these sheer cliffs over 50 feet high. I'm always perplexed why these have no names that I've seen, because almost every rock and unranked peak in the state has a name, including a bunch in this region of the Black Mountains. But to the east and northeast, we got a really cool view of Grandfather Mountain and the peaks of Linville Gorge and Lake James and Morganton and the South Mountains towards the east and southeast. But the best view is the preview of what's to come. Looking south at the peaks of the central Black Mountains. Let me get up on this rock for a second. So almost equivalent in elevation right now to Winter Star Mountain. And from there, I'm going to do a big drop in the Deep Gap and a big climb out of Deep Gap towards the high elevations of the Blacks, basically from Potato Hill, Cattail Peak, and Balsam Cone. I'm going to stay almost the entire stretch above 6,300 feet on the way to Mount Mitchell. It's going to be a wild ride. These clouds haven't moved too much in the last 30 minutes. so it's a good sign. But I think that the rain is going to happen later in the afternoon, so I better get moving. Summit of Potato Hill. Man, that was rough. Coming out of Deep Gap. It's not the steepest or longest of climbs, but if you're hiking up Potato Hill from Deep Gap, that means you had a hard hike just to get to Deep Gap, so it's always going to be tough and slow. I think I'm probably about an hour behind my hypothetical schedule at the moment, but this was the last tough climb of the day. I don't think the climbs out of Big Tom Gap or up to Mount Mitchell or Blackstock are nearly as tough overall. They're definitely going to feel tough, given the mileage and elevation gain I would do up to those points. But that is the last extended climb of like 700 feet or so. So maybe I can make up some of that lost time. It's almost 1, by the way. A little preview of what's coming up. Cattail Peak is on the right behind that tree. The trail actually winds around the west side, never summiting despite the false sign. And this pointy peak right here is Balsam Cone. That's a pretty gradual ascent and mostly flat in between these. The second ridge over, that's Maple Camp Bald. Then I gotta drop into Big Tom Gap and climb up Big Tom and Mount Craig on the right. Low ceiling clouds and drizzle starting to come in around the Black Mountains. Almost at the summit of Big Tom. On top of Mount Craig, second highest peak in the east. I have this premonition that I'm not going to have many views the rest of the day. Probably won't be taking much more video at this rate. Gotta put all my stuff in waterproof bags. I decided to take the longer route down to the Buncombe Horse Range Trail using the Mount Mitchell Trail. It is a mile longer, but I think I made a great decision. I already know that the footbed on this trail was better than Camp Alice and Old Mitchell, and since I hiked this in January 2019, looks like the State Park and NC High Peaks Association have been greatly improving the trail, and they're still working on it. But there are a ton of these steps in place and some on the sides where there's some flagging tape and flags, and they've added a bunch of these all the way down in a bunch of rock crush sections, and the trail's in a lot better condition than it has been. And I know that the Old Mitchell Trail and the Camp Alice Trail is just treacherous. It is full of gigantic rocks and roots covered in moss, and with the rain that would have been really slow going downhill. So I should be down towards Commissary Hill in about 10 minutes, and then I will pick up the Buncombe Horse Range Trail and keep heading south. Following the Mountain Sea Trail and Buncombe Horse Range Trail south, below 5,500 feet, give or take, paralleling NC 128. It's definitely gone from drizzle to steady rain. Fortunately, I brought my large regular umbrella because there was 0% chance of lightning in the forecast, and I haven't heard any thunder at all today, so I felt like I was safe with this. But it's about 4:30 p.m. Still have about 3 miles on this trail, I believe. And then another 8 or so miles on the MST and the Big Butt Trail. So, I don't know. I have 10 to 12 miles left. I really don't know. That should take about 4 hours, I'm guessing. So I'm not going to finish until about 8:30, 9-ish. Clearly I've finished the hike since I'm in my car. It's about 2 a.m. No, I'm not that slow. I'm at a rest area east of Hickory, North Carolina. I finished the hike about 10:20, 10:25 p.m. I'm not exactly sure because when I got to my car, it was pouring and I was soaked through, very cold. All I could think about was changing into some dry clothes and then making sure that at least my driver's seat is not soaked. And some of my other stuff that I'm going to use at home tonight and tomorrow also didn't get soaked. So my passenger seat is still sopping wet. And I also got some really bad calf cramps when I got to my car. And so I kept jumping in and out, trying to stretch it. I didn't end up leaving the trailhead until about 11 p.m. So I would say that the Black Mountains Marathon hike was by far the most difficult hike, probably physical activity that I've ever done, both physically and mentally. In total, it ended up being about 15 hours, maybe 15 hours and 20 minutes long. A few hours more than expected, but my GPS was reading 28.8 miles, which is over 2 miles longer than what I drew on Cal Topo. It's not always accurate on Cal Topo when I do that, but usually it's a little bit closer than that. I'd say in total I did about 8,000 feet of elevation gain, but it was a really miserable and kind of scary back end of the hike. I was feeling fine when I left Mount Mitchell. You know, it was just mainly drizzle, and all of the downhill and the flats that I was doing let me absorb all of the liquids and the calories that I intook when I was at the visitor center. And I got a second wind and I was going at a good pace, but the rain kept getting harder and harder. And then when I turned west on the MST to go around Potato Knob, it started getting a little bit windy. And then by the time I got to Blackstock Knob, it was sunset around 7 o'clock. And I had to start using my light. And then the wind started getting worse and worse. The rain kept getting heavier and heavier. And it was scary hiking those exposed ridge lines for hours, because on top of Blackstock, that was over 6,300 feet and a pretty long ridge line after that. And then the Big Butt Trail basically stays on top of the ridge above 5,500 feet for, I don't know, 4 miles. So I hiked about 3 hours with wind gusts in complete darkness, 30, 40 miles an hour, maybe even close to 50 at some points. And everyone knows that moisture combined with wind is what causes blowdowns. So every time I would hear big gusts, I would hide behind a big tree or big cliff to avoid getting hit by anything. I never saw something come down, but it was just pretty scary hiking for almost 4 hours in darkness with heavy rain and wind. And it was pretty cold, probably about 40, 45 degrees, and just I was completely soaked through. So it was a pretty dumb decision on my part. You know, a couple days ago when I saw the forecast begin to change because of that tropical storm, I should have just changed the shuttle or got the shuttle for the Black Mountain Crest Trail going up to Mount Mitchell, because it was a pretty good day. It was a tough day as usual. And then the clouds didn't really come in until after Big Tom. So I could have ended it there around 3 o'clock and just come back and did the rest of it for hike number 8. But I am extremely stubborn and overconfident in my abilities. And I think I was on a pace to be about, I don't know, 12 and a half, 13 hours long for this hike. But the rain and the darkness really slow you down. My pace was just a lot slower on those ridgeline hikes, especially on the Big Butt Trail, which is not a hard trail, but everything was wet, the ground was giving away. I kept having to stop every time there's a big wind gust just because of trying to be really cautious. So I think it was pretty dumb by me. That's one of the most dangerous hikes I've ever done, in my opinion. But I ended up finishing the Black Mountains Hiking Challenge in 7 complete hikes in 2019. The last one was surely the toughest and the dumbest. So I do not recommend that for anyone unless you're an elite trail runner. There's no way you're going to be able to finish that hike under 12 hours unless you're just incredibly strong hiker. So if you're going to do that, I would say pick a day in the middle of the summer with the most daylight possible. Start at sunrise or even earlier and have good weather, because really the thing is, once you get above 5,000 feet close to Siloa Knob, you're above 5,000 feet and on a lot of exposed ridgelines for about 20 miles. So if the weather starts turning bad, the only escape is to try to get out to the highway or the Blue Ridge Parkway and take a shuttle, or not take a shuttle, hitch. Otherwise, that is a 2 to 3 day backpacking trip. And even then, the water sources are not great because it's all ridgeline. But overall, pretty good first half of the day. Really, really bad second half of the day. And I should turn this off and try to get home by 4:30. See you guys next time.